The day Mira was kidnapped began with a scream, and annoyingly it was her own. Not the terrified kind, but the outraged. I asked the universe for one simple thing and it still betrayed me kind. One moment she was sinking into the warm forest hot spring she cherished with the devotion of a worshipper, steam curling around her like a gentle embrace, birds singing politely in the treetops, and the world behaving itself for once. The next moment, a hand burst out of the water beside her, grabbed her ankle, and yanked her under so violently she inhaled half the spring. Her muffled shriek echoed through the bubbles as she flailed in blind panic and boiled frustration, her thoughts a single, furious howl. I swear, if this is a frog, I am committing amphibian murder. When she finally shot up through the surface, coughing, hair plastered over her eyes, the universe delivered its punchline. Standing at the edge of the water were three Fey soldiers in mismatched armor that looked like it had been borrowed from a museum, and repurposed by someone with no artistic talent. They stared at her with wide, frantic eyes, clutching glowing nets and scrolls and something that might have once been a ceremonial shovel. All three were trembling as if they had just been caught breaking into their own queen's treasure vault. Mira blinked through dripping lashes, then blinked again, because surely she was hallucinating from steam exposure. The smallest soldier squeaked, "She matches the prophecy." Mostly. The middle one elbowed him and whispered fiercely, "Do not comment on her state of undress. The prophecy never mentioned that part." Mira, with all the dignity a naked and soaking woman could muster, splashed water in their direction and roared, "What are you lunatics talking about, and why are you here while I am obviously bathing?" The tallest soldier straightened, took a breath as if preparing to jump off a cliff, and announced, "Human Mira of the Outer Woods, we come bearing grave news. You are required by royal edict to return with us at once to the Fey realm. Our kingdom is in peril." Mira stared flatly. "Let me summarize. You broke into my bath, nearly drowned me, and expect me to calmly come along because you said so." "Yes," he said, hopeful. She sank lower into the water, clutching a floating piece of bark for modesty. "Absolutely not." But they did not listen, because panic was clearly their dominant personality trait. The smallest soldier unrolled a scroll with shaking hands. It read, in elegant curling script, "The Savior shall be retrieved from her sacred waters, unclothed and unwilling, yet essential." The soldiers all nodded at her like this ridiculous prophecy explained everything. Mira slapped a hand over her face. "Who writes these things?" Before she could negotiate, threaten, bribe, or throw a rock at them, the soldiers activated the shimmering nets. Magic twisted around her like sparkling ropes, lifting her from the water with the gentle cruelty of a mother cat dragging a kitten somewhere it absolutely did not want to go. Mira shrieked again, this time at a higher pitch, because being hoisted into the air while naked was not on her list of acceptable life experiences. She kicked one soldier in the face on accident. The other two screamed in unison and dropped the net, sending her tumbling onto moss and mud. Embarrassment, fury, and humiliation waged war across her face as she scrambled for anything resembling clothing. One soldier, trying to be helpful, offered her a leaf the size of a dinner plate. She tried to throttle him with it. But their fear quickly overshadowed her anger. As they hurried to bind the sparkling net around her again, one whispered under his breath, "If the men she saved find out we did this, they will kill us slowly." Mira froze. What men? The soldiers exchanged glances of the kind that said they were definitely not supposed to have said that. The middle one swallowed. "Years ago. 3 men. You saved them. They were near death. Before the corruption spread." Myra's heart stumbled. She had saved many travelers over the years, but only once had she found 3 men together, half dead and hunted by something she never saw. They had been strange, intense, powerful even in their weakness. She remembered the way they had looked at her, like she was something impossible. The way they disappeared by morning, leaving only a charm carved of dark crystal and a lingering warmth she tried to forget. She sat in the net, shock overriding embarrassment. "You know them." The soldiers were sweating so hard their helmets fogged. "Everyone knows them," one whispered. "They are legends. Or warnings. It depends who you ask." That was deeply unhelpful. The soldiers hauled her through the shimmering veil between realms, the world dissolving into threads of color and cold. Her stomach flipped, the ground vanished, and then she was standing on glowing marble inside a vast hall filled with luminous trees and spiraling columns. Fey courtiers gasped and gawked at her muddy, dripping, underdressed state as she clutched the fallen net around herself like a makeshift robe. The queen awaited at the far end, tall and radiant, wearing an expression that said she took prophecies far too seriously. She gestured dramatically, and the hall fell silent. Human Mira of the Outer Woods. You have returned just as foretold. Our realm faces ruin. Only you can prevent the coming devastation. Mira tightened her grip on the net. I want it stated for the official record that I did not return voluntarily. The queen continued serenely. The cursed crown stirs once more. It calls for the chosen. The chosen, Mira muttered, could at least be given pants. Before the queen could reply, a sharp tremor shook the hall. Lanterns flickered. The crystal floor vibrated beneath her feet. Somewhere distant, a horn sounded, long and mournful. The queen's expression cracked, revealing fear. The soldiers who kidnapped Mira dropped to their knees. They are here, one whispered. Who? Mira demanded. The tallest soldier's voice trembled. The 3 men you saved. The ones who vanished. The ones who swore a life debt to you. They sense your abduction. They are coming. Mira stared, mind spinning. And that is bad because, the soldier choked, they are powerful enough to tear apart the realm. A chilling silence fell. In the distance, the horn sounded again, louder, closer. A wave of pressure rippled through the air like the breath of something colossal. The queen's crown flickered as if responding to their approach. The soldier whispered the sentence that turned Mira's stomach to ice. If they reach you, nothing will stop them. Not even us. The forest around the Fey realm shook as if giants walked through it, and deep within that trembling wilderness, 3 men stood in a silent circle as a dark crystal charm pulsed bright enough to illuminate their faces. Kale, the tallest of them, clenched his jaw so tightly the muscle twitched, the glow reflecting in his storm-gray eyes. He had not seen that charm awaken since the night Mira disappeared from their lives years ago, and its sudden thunderous reaction made something ancient and violent stir in him. Riven stood opposite him, fingers twitching with restless magic as sparks flickered between them like fireflies gone feral. His usually calm voice cracked when he spoke. This is not a warning pulse. This is a distress flare. A desperate one. Torin, positioned between them and trying to appear composed, failed entirely. His usual smirk had vanished, replaced by an expression Mira had only seen once. Fear. He ran a shaky hand through his dark hair. Then we go get her. Now. Kale turned his head sharply toward him. The gates are sealed. We were forbidden from ever returning to the realm. Riven snorted, his magic sparking louder. Forbidden implies we listened. Which we did not. The charm pulsed again, vibrating violently, and all 3 men flinched at the same time as if struck in the same place. The bond between them and Mira, created unintentionally years ago, still lived beneath their skin like a dormant vow. Kale felt it first, a ripping sensation along his spine, as though Mira were calling out to him not with words but with raw panic. Rage hit him like a rising tide. Someone took her. Riven shot him a sharp look. And you know where? Kale pointed toward the shimmering distortion between 2 trees. The Fey realm. They dared. Torin did not wait another heartbeat. He sprinted ahead, cape catching the wind. His usual easy swagger was gone, replaced by ferocious purpose. The trees grew thinner as they approached the shimmering veil, the air crackling like held lightning. Riven raised both hands and thrust his magic forward. The barrier screamed in protest, rippling in waves as runes lit up like frantic stars. He muttered through gritted teeth, whoever reinforced it did a sloppy job. Probably someone too confident to expect us to try this again. Kale added his strength, gripping the barrier with both hands as if it were something physical he could tear apart through sheer force. The magic bent, cracked, and finally shattered like glass under pressure, sending a shockwave that knocked loose branches from trees and nearly toppled Torin over. They stepped into the Fey realm with the confidence of men who expected resistance, and were more than willing to destroy whatever stood between them and their lost human. Torin was the first to speak as they materialized on glowing ground. I hate this place. Everything sparkles. Even the rocks sparkle. Rocks should not sparkle. Riven gave him a sideways glance. You sparkle sometimes. The rogue choked. That was once. And it was your spell that exploded in my direction. Kale closed his eyes briefly, trying to tune out their bickering and focus on what mattered. He extended his senses, searching for that familiar spark he remembered. Mara was not magic by nature, but being near her had always felt like oxygen after drowning. He felt it faintly, like a fragile flame flickering in a storm. She is afraid, he muttered. Torin froze. Since when can you sense fear? Riven answered grimly. Since she saved our lives and unknowingly tied us to her. That bond still answers her. Whether she likes it or not. They moved swiftly through the glowing forest, leaving shards of broken enchantments behind them. Every step brought more Fey soldiers out of the shadows, but none were prepared for three determined men with a unified purpose. The first group charged, spears raised and shimmering with magic. Kale stepped forward like a wall of muscle and fury. Before the soldiers could strike, he slammed his fist into the ground. The resulting shockwave sent them flying backward as if swatted by an invisible giant. Riven flicked a wrist, unraveling their weapons into harmless streams of silver dust. Torin darted behind the staggering soldiers, tapping each lightly on the back of the neck. They all collapsed instantly. He jogged back to his companions, brushing imaginary dust from his shoulders. Not a bad start. I give it a 7. Riven raised an eyebrow. You knocked one out with his own helmet. I give it an 8 for creativity. Kale ignored them again, eyes locked forward. Mara was close now. Too close to danger for his liking. The ground beneath them hummed with energy as they approached the Fey Palace walls. A massive barrier rose before them, shimmering like molten moonlight. Riven exhaled sharply, studying the patterns woven into the magic. This is new. It reacts to hostility. Kale tested it with a step forward. The barrier roared back with a blast of white light that pushed even him a step backward. Torin circled it. So, let me guess. We cannot enter unless we are friendly. Riven nodded. Yes. Torin shrugged. Good thing I know a back door then. Both men stared at him. Torin grinned and pointed to a seemingly flat wall. I may have broken in once years ago. Do not ask why. Do you want me to save time or not? Kale grunted. Lead the way. Torin pressed his palm against the wall, and a spiral shape lit up beneath his skin. The stone dissolved into mist, revealing a narrow hidden corridor. The three slipped inside before the mist returned to its solid shape. Inside the palace, chaos ruled. Fey courtiers ran in all directions, guards shouted contradictory orders, and the floor trembled as if bracing itself for disaster. Every alarm bell in the palace was tolling. The men moved through the panic with single-minded focus. Kale caught the fading thread of Myra's presence, following it down a corridor that pulsed with gold light. When they reached the end, they found a massive doorway guarded by a squadron of elite Fey knights. Before the knights could draw weapons, the ground shook violently, as if something enormous had struck the palace from outside. Riven stiffened. That was her fear spike. Something frightened her. Badly. Kale did not hesitate. He charged. The knights were strong, swift, and magically enhanced, but the three men were not ordinary opponents. Torin weaved through them with fluid steps, stealing weapons with a flick of his fingers and knocking them aside effortlessly. Riven grabbed the magic of the palace itself, warping its energy to bind the knights in shimmering threads. Kale took the last few down with brutal, efficient strikes, knocking them unconscious. The massive double doors groaned under the force of the quake. Something powerful was approaching from the other side. Mira. Kale pushed his hand against the door. Warmth flickered faintly under his fingers. The bond pulsed with her terror. Riven spoke quietly beside him. If she is in danger, we do not wait. Torin cracked his knuckles. Then we stopped being polite. The doors exploded inward as Cale pushed with every ounce of strength he possessed. And there, across the grand hall, stood Mira, wrapped in a torn fey net, eyes wide with fear and disbelief as she stared at the men who had come to tear apart an entire realm for her. Mira had always imagined that reunions with people she had once saved would be warm, grateful, maybe even tearfully heartfelt. She had not, however, expected the moment to involve 3 men bursting through a pair of enchanted palace doors like vengeance incarnate, a dozen fey knights sprawled unconscious behind them, and the ground still trembling from the violent force of their arrival. Her first coherent thought was a panicked, flustered they look even more dangerous than I remember, immediately followed by the realization that she was wrapped in a torn net that barely covered anything important. Her face ignited with humiliation. The 3 men halted just long enough to take her in, eyes flicking from her face to her ridiculous situation, and some mix of fury and protective instinct twisted their expressions in ways that made the fey around them shrink back. Cale was the first to move, stepping forward with the single-minded, unstoppable momentum of a landslide. Even now, Mira remembered the warmth of his hands when she had once patched him up, the heavy steadiness of him as he leaned against her cottage wall refusing to rest. But now he radiated a steel-edged power she had never seen before. His voice rumbled across the hall, low and dangerous. Who touched her? Mira felt heat rush up her neck. Now was absolutely not the time to notice the way his voice made the air vibrate. Before she could respond, Riven stepped to Cale's side, moving like a shadow sharpened into human form. He looked the same as she remembered, but older, colder, his eyes calculating like a man who measured every threat by which spell could end it quickest. His gaze swept the hall, lingering on the Queen and the guards. His tone was soft but carried the threat of a storm. Name them, and I will unmake them. Torin arrived last, sliding in between his companions with an expression Mira recognized too well. It was the expression of a man who usually spoke in jokes but was currently 2 heartbeats away from real violence. He offered Mira a smile that tried to be reassuring but came out tight. Hey, sunshine. You look like you have had a very rough day. In response, Mira made a strangled noise somewhere between a laugh and a groan. I was kidnapped from a bath. They brought me here in a net. A very drafty net. All 3 men stiffened in unison, and the magic in the air rippled like something alive. Mira held up a hand quickly. Please do not destroy anyone until I find clothing. The Fey Queen rose from her throne with a rustle of glowing fabric, lifting one elegant hand. Despite the chaos, her posture remained dignified and composed, though her eyes narrowed slightly with irritation. This woman is the chosen. She is essential to our survival. We intended her no harm. Cale's laugh came out sharp and humorless. You abducted her. Riven added, and prophesied she should arrive unclothed. Torin finished, pointless detail. Very questionable. The soldiers who had captured Mira sank to their knees behind the Queen, trembling as Cale's gaze swept over them. One blurted, It was in the prophecy, we did not write it. Mira pinched the bridge of her nose, struggling between anger and exasperation. Enough. Everyone calm down. I need answers, clothing, and preferably a meal that is not glowing. The Queen studied her with an unreadable expression. Human Mira, the crown of shadows has awakened. If it is not contained, the entire realm will fall. Only the chosen human may suppress its rise. Mira blinked at her. Why me? Because the ancient prophecy declares it. Mira groaned. Prophecy seems to be causing more problems than solving them. Before the Queen could respond, a loud crash echoed from somewhere deep within the palace. The lights overhead flickered, and the ground quaked again, harder this time. Fey courtiers gasped and clutched each other as the tremors rattled the crystalline pillars. Riven snapped his head toward the ceiling. Something is feeding off the palace wards. Torin looked toward Mira. That crown thing you mentioned did not by chance wake up just now, did it? Mira threw her hands in the air. I do not know, I was too busy being kidnapped to receive a detailed briefing. Cale took a steady step toward her, his expression softening for the first time since he arrived. Mira, are you hurt? She shook her head. Mostly just inconvenienced and cold. Very cold. Without hesitation, Cale shrugged off his cloak and draped it over her shoulders. It smelled faintly of forest smoke and iron, and something warm she could not name. Riven murmured something, and the cloak sealed itself with a gentle hum of magic. There. At least now you look less like kidnapped laundry. The Queen cleared her throat pointedly. This touching reunion is all very well, but the danger we face is greater than personal bonds. The three men turned their gaze on her simultaneously, and Mira felt the temperature in the room drop with the weight of their combined scrutiny. The Queen faltered for a heartbeat before regaining her composure. The prophecy warns that the three men the human once saved will one day destroy this realm. Unless she intervenes. Mira stared at her. Destroy the realm, that seems dramatic. Torin crossed his arms. We have never destroyed so much as a small village. Riven muttered, that one tavern does not count. Torin pointed at him. That was you. Not me. Riven shrugged with no shame whatsoever. Semantics. Cale ignored their bickering and faced Mira. We have no intention of harming anyone here. But we will if they threaten you. The Queen gestured toward a crystalline archway. If you do not believe me, then witness the truth for yourselves. She motioned for the group to follow. Mira hesitated, glancing at the men, but their silent nods made something warm swell beneath her ribs. Together they walked after the Queen, through the corridors where every piece of architecture glowed faintly with ancient magic. The deeper they went, the more the air changed, growing colder, sharper, filled with a tension that made the hairs on Mira's arms stand up. They entered a chamber so vast it seemed carved into the sky itself. In the center, suspended above a pedestal of white stone, hovered a crown of black crystal. It pulsed like a heartbeat, sending out waves of shadow that crawled along the floor. Mira felt a tug in her chest as if something inside her recognized the artifact, though she did not know why. The Queen spoke quietly. This crown amplifies the darkest emotions of those who come near. If it grips the wrong mind, that mind can unravel the realm. Mira frowned. Why would you bring us here then? The Queen hesitated before admitting, because only one with a pure intention may learn the truth. You saved these men before. If they are destined to destroy us, the crown will react. Riven stiffened. This is a trap. Torin stepped closer to Mira. Stay behind us. The crown pulsed again, and a violent ripple of energy surged outward, striking the three men with invisible force. Cale staggered, grabbing his head. Riven collapsed to one knee. Torin slammed a hand against the wall to stay balanced. Mira lunged forward instinctively. Stopped, she reached out without thinking and grabbed Cale's arm. The crown reacted instantly. Its pulse softened. The shadows crawling across the floor recoiled like frightened creatures returning to their nest. The room still trembled with the fading pulses of the crown, and Mira felt the vibrations deep in her bones as she forced herself to remain upright. The Queen had retreated to a safe distance behind a barrier of shimmering light, clearly unwilling to risk being struck by the magical backlash. Cale, Riven, and Torin were only now regaining their balance, and every protective instinct Mira possessed rose like a tide inside her. This artifact was affecting them far more than it affected her, and she could not understand why. Her hand was still on Cale's arm, and she felt the faint tremor beneath his skin. He looked down at her with an expression torn between relief and frustration. You should not have touched me then. You could have been hurt. Mira shook her head stubbornly. You were hurting. That was enough. Torin attempted to straighten but winced and leaned against the wall. I am beginning to think this crown has a personal grudge against us. Riven rubbed his temples with a pained expression. It amplifies destructive potential. It senses ours. Cale clenched his jaw. We do not pose a threat to this realm. The Queen replied from behind her barrier, her voice echoing across the chamber. The prophecy does not lie. Three men with great power, tied to one human. Their fate intertwined. If corrupted, they could unmake our entire realm. Mira shot back, maybe instead of assuming they will destroy everything, you consider the possibility that someone wants you to believe that. The Queen stiffened, her eyes narrowing. You speak without knowledge. Mira was about to argue again when a loud crash thundered from the far side of the chamber. A section of the crystalline wall exploded inward, showering the room with shards of shimmering debris. From the swirling dust emerged a familiar figure, the Fey commander who had overseen Myra's kidnapping. His eyes glowed with the oily gleam of shadow magic, and a corrupted aura pulsed around him like a second skin. The queen gasped. "You betray the crown." The commander stepped forward, wearing a twisted smile. "I serve the true ruler. Not a queen clinging to broken prophecies." Riven rose instantly, energy crackling at his fingertips. "That crown is not meant for you." The corrupted commander laughed, a sound sharp enough to cut stone. "It is not meant for me, mage. It is meant for her." He jabbed a finger at Mira, and for a heartbeat, the room stilled as if the air itself held its breath. Mira stared at him in disbelief. "Me, why would I need that cursed thing?" The commander tilted his head, shadows slithering across his skin. "Because only you can activate its full power. Only the chosen can awaken the corruption completely." Kale stepped in front of Mira with a movement so fast it was almost a blur. He growled, "If you come near her, I will break you in half." The commander ignored him and continued speaking. "The moment the crown awakened, the realm felt her presence. It called to her. It seeks to bind to her. To turn her into its vessel." Mira felt her stomach lurch. "That is terrible motivation. Why would I ever help the crown?" The commander smiled. "Because you will not have a choice." Without warning, he unleashed a wave of dark energy that ripped through the chamber like a storm. Kale threw himself in front of Mira, absorbing the brunt of the impact. A cracking sound echoed sickeningly as he fell to one knee. Mira caught him before he hit the floor, panic slicing through her. "Kale, please," he gritted his teeth. "I am fine. Stay behind me." Torin darted around them with dagger in hand, weaving between the waves of energy. He moved with a grace Mira forgot he possessed, each step precise, each dodge effortless. He flashed the commander a grin full of sharp teeth. "Come on, you glowing disaster. Fight someone who fights back." The commander snarled and sent a bolt of energy at Torin, who twisted out of the way and countered by slamming the heel of his boot into the commander's ribs. For a moment, the commander staggered, and Riven took advantage. He slammed both hands together, releasing a concentrated burst of blue light that collided with the commander so violently that the ground split beneath him. The corrupted face slid backward but did not fall. He only laughed again, this time with a warped tone that grated against Myra's ears. "You think your strength matters, you think your magic matters. The crown chose her. And once she binds to it, she will destroy everything you claim to protect." Mira felt anger ignite inside her, bright and fierce. She stepped out from behind Kale despite his strained protest and glared at the commander. "I am not a weapon. I am not destroying anything. Especially not because of some cursed rock crown that cannot mind its own business." The commander hissed, his corrupted aura thickening. "You will. Unless you break the bond with them." Mira faltered. "Break the bond?" The commander pointed at Kale, Riven, and Torin. "Yes. Them. The prophecy is not about who destroys the realm. It is about who is responsible. Your bond with them fuels the crown. End it, and the crown will die." The silence that followed was suffocating. Mira felt the world tilt beneath her. Break her bond with the 3 men she saved. The men who had nearly torn the realm apart to reach her. The men who were looking at her now with expressions she could not bear to see. Riven spoke first, gently. "Mira. You do not have to listen to him," Torin added, shaking his head. "Do not even consider it." Kale rose despite the pain, his eyes fierce. "Our bond protects you. It does not endanger you." But Mira was already moving. Not toward them. Toward the crown. The queen gasped. The men shouted in unison. "Mira, no!" But Mira knew she could not run forever. She needed to understand what the crown wanted. Needed to stop whatever darkness the commander served. She reached the pedestal, the crown humming like a living heartbeat. Up close, she felt it calling to her, whispering her name, promising answers if she would only touch it. The commander screamed, "Yes, touch it, let the realm fall." The shadows surged toward her, but Torin intercepted them, slashing through the dark tendrils with his daggers. Riven conjured a barrier around her, straining to maintain it as the crown fought back. Cale tried to reach her, but the commander blocked him, their powers clashing in a violent burst of energy. Mira pressed her hands to the pedestal. She could feel the crown, cold and ancient, waiting. But underneath its hunger was something else. A distortion? A manipulation. The prophecy she had been told was wrong. Someone had twisted it. Someone powerful. Someone who wanted her bond with the men broken, not because it was dangerous, but because it was strong. She pulled back her hands, eyes blazing with clarity. This is not the full prophecy. Someone tampered with it. The queen staggered, shock etched across her face. Tampered? Mira pointed directly at the corrupted commander. He serves whoever rewrote the prophecy. Whoever wants the crown to corrupt the realm. And they need me for that. The commander shrieked and lunged at her in desperation. But Cale was faster. He grabbed the commander by the throat and slammed him into the floor with enough force to rattle the entire chamber. Riven bound him with chains of pure energy. Torin disarmed him with a swift kick. Mira stood over the defeated commander, breathing hard. She knew now what she had to do. She could not destroy the crown yet. But she could destroy the lie. And she would not let anyone sever her bond with the men who had come for her. Not prophecy. Not corruption. Not fate itself. The queen ordered the corrupted commander taken away, but the damage he had done was already spreading through the palace like cracks in glass. The walls groaned, the glowing floors flickered, and the air itself trembled under the unstable pulse of the crown. Mira felt the vibrations beneath her feet and knew they did not have much time before something catastrophic broke loose. The queen gathered her composure and approached with an unsteady grace, her eyes darting between the hovering crown and the three men still bristling with protective fury. The true prophecy is hidden, Mira said quietly. Whoever altered it did so to manipulate all of you. The queen hesitated, her expression tightening. The original prophecy was sealed beneath the crystal cavern. No one has accessed it in centuries. Mira pointed toward the trembling crown. Someone clearly did. Cale stepped closer to Mira, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. His voice was rough, still edged with pain from the crown's earlier strike. We need to see the original prophecy. Now. Riven nodded in agreement, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the unstable magic swirling around the chamber. If the corrupted version was designed to drive fear, then the original will reveal the truth of why Mira is connected to this crown. Torin flashed Mira a reassuring smile, although worry shadowed his eyes. And we should leave before this shiny disaster decides to explode. The queen led them out of the chamber, and Mira felt relief wash over her as the oppressive presence of the crown faded behind them. But even as they walked through the winding corridors, Mira could hear distant cracking sounds as if the palace was fracturing under the force of its own magic. When they exited into the open air, a chilled wind swept across the courtyard, carrying flecks of luminous dust that fell from the trembling towers above. Riven scanned the horizon. The instability is spreading faster than expected. The crown is drawing energy from the realm itself. Torin exhaled sharply. So basically, the realm is an hourglass, and the crown is eating the sand. Mira rubbed her arms to ward off the cold. Then let us move quickly before we run out of sand. The crystal cavern lay beneath the palace grounds, accessible only through a concealed staircase hidden beneath the roots of a massive silver tree. The queen approached the tree and pressed her hand to the trunk, causing the roots to unfurl like awakened serpents, revealing an ancient spiral staircase. The air that drifted up from below was icy and sharp, carrying the scent of minerals and old magic. Mira descended first, Cale close behind her, as though ready to catch her if she slipped on the frost-slick steps. Riven and Torin followed, their footsteps echoing in the hollow chamber. The cavern opened into a vast space filled with towering crystal formations that emitted a soft, eerie glow. The light refracted in every direction, creating thousands of ghostly reflections of themselves. Mira gazed around in wonder. She had never seen anything so beautiful, or so unsettling. Torin shivered. Lovely. Like walking into a haunted chandelier. Cale ignored him, his eyes scanning for threats. Riven extended his hands and murmured a quiet spell, causing the crystals to resonate with a faint hum. The resonance is familiar. The same magic that binds our connection to Mira. Mira frowned. So the caverns are linked to our bond. The queen approached the deepest part of the cavern where a slab of crystal formed a smooth table, etched with ancient symbols. Here. The original prophecy is sealed within this stone. Only one with the true connection may reveal it. Mira stepped forward, feeling an uneasy flutter in her chest. What if she was wrong? What if the prophecy truly condemned the men to destruction? She placed both hands on the slab. The crystal beneath her palms warmed instantly. A soft glow spread outward like ripples in water. Then, with a low resonant crack, the surface split open. A scroll of pure light rose from the stone, unfolding in the air. The letters glowed with an ancient brilliance, swirling like living ink. Mira read the words as they appeared. 3 souls intertwined by fate shall walk the edges of ruin. Their bond shall shake realms, not through destruction, but through preservation. Should darkness corrupt their path, only the human chosen by heart and courage shall shield them from the crown born of shadow. Riven let out a breath he had been holding. The prophecy never claimed we would destroy the realm. Cale clenched his fists. Someone changed it. Twisted it. To turn us into weapons. Torin muttered, I always knew I was weaponizable, but this is extreme. Mira ignored his attempt at humor as her eyes locked on the final lines of the prophecy. The crown seeks the chosen not to consume her, but to be purified through her. Only through her bond shall shadow become light. The cavern trembled as the last words faded into the air. Mira stepped back, shaken. The crown does not want to destroy the realm. It wants to be freed. Riven snapped his gaze toward the surface. If that is true, then its instability is not corruption. It is desperation. A thunderous crack echoed from above, shaking crystal dust loose from the ceiling. Cale grabbed Mira's arm protectively. The crown is losing control. The queen looked horrified. If it destabilizes fully, the backlash could collapse the entire palace. Mira felt determination crystallizing inside her. Then we have to reach it. Now. They sprinted back toward the staircase as the cavern trembled more violently, sending shimmering shards raining down. Riven raised barriers to shield Mira from falling crystal. Torin guided her through the maze with surprising precision. Cale kept pace beside her, every step fueled by an unspoken promise. When they emerged onto the palace grounds, chaos had overtaken everything. The sky had darkened to a swirling storm of shadow and light. The towers groaned as cracks pulsed through their glowing surfaces. The crown's energy flared from the windows of the central chamber like a beacon of raw, unstable magic. Riven shouted over the roaring wind, it is feeding on the realm. The longer we wait, the stronger it gets. Mira tightened Cale's cloak around her and ran. Inside the throne hall, the crown hovered high above the floor, pulsing violently, sending shockwaves that shattered columns and shattered furniture. It was like standing in the heart of a storm. Mira took a trembling breath and stepped forward. The crown's voice whispered inside her mind now, not with malice, but with longing. It wanted release. Peace. Light. But it was bound in shadow, twisted by whoever had corrupted the prophecy. Cale grabbed her wrist. You cannot touch it alone. Mira met his gaze, soft but firm. I am not alone. Not as long as you are here. Riven and Torin moved to her side, forming a protective circle around her. The crown surged with violent light as she stepped toward it. The men braced themselves, gripping her shoulders, her arms, grounding her as the energy intensified. When Mira reached up and placed her hand on the crown, all sound vanished. The world dissolved into blinding light. And then the crown shattered beneath her touch. Light swallowed everything. Mira could not see her own hands, nor feel the floor beneath her feet, nor hear the men calling her name. She floated in a vast emptiness, weightless and suspended in a place that existed and did not exist, a place between breaths and heartbeats. The shattered pieces of the crown drifted around her like fragments of a fallen star, each one glowing with a soft, wavering light. She reached for one instinctively, and as her fingers brushed it, memories that were not hers flooded her mind. She saw ancient Fae crafting the crown with trembling reverence, intending it to guard the realm from corruption. She saw how their fear twisted into obsession, how they sealed profound magic into the crystal, how they bound the crown with an enchantment meant to hold back darkness forever. But nothing lasted forever. Over centuries, a shadow grew within it, feeding on fear, feeding on rewritten prophecies and half-truths, feeding on the belief that destruction was inevitable. The shadow had clung to Mira because she was connected to three powerful men who defied predictions simply by existing. It wanted release, but the corruption had poisoned its purpose. It did not want destruction. It wanted freedom. Mira exhaled slowly, letting the truth settle inside her. She whispered into the glowing void, "I am not your vessel. But I can release you." The fragments of the crown pulsed in response, drawing together toward her like petals curling inward around a heart. Mira placed both hands in the swirling lights, letting warmth flood through her. She thought of Kale's unwavering strength, Riven's fierce intelligence, Torin's irrepressible courage. She thought of how their bond had felt the first night she saved them, when she had sensed something profound in them that she could not name. She thought of how they came back for her, crossing realms, facing death, defying fate. Light surged outward, bursting from her chest like a rising sun. Myra's eyes snapped open as her feet slammed back onto solid ground. She stumbled, and strong hands caught her before she fell. Kale held her with a look of raw worry etched into every line of his face, his breath uneven. Riven hovered nearby, his magic flickering around him like a trembling aura that had not fully settled. Torin leaned forward, scanning her face, his usual confidence replaced by wide-eyed fear. "Mira, are you all right? Can you hear us?" Mira blinked, letting the room sharpen into focus. The throne hall no longer shook. The walls no longer cracked. The storm outside had dissolved into quiet twilight. The shattered crown lay at her feet, but the pieces no longer pulsed with shadow. They glowed faintly, like harmless crystal remnants of a long-dead enchantment. The queen stood a few steps away, surrounded by guards who stared at Mira with a mixture of awe and apprehension. Mira took a breath and stepped forward, still wrapped in Kale's cloak. "The crown is purified. It is no longer a threat." The queen looked relieved yet deeply unsettled. "You held the entire realm in your hands. You control the magic that no Fae has ever been able to tame." Mira shook her head. "I did not control it. I listened to it. And I listened to myself." Kale squeezed her shoulder gently, grounding her. The queen glanced at the defeated soldiers being dragged in by guards, their armor dented, their faces pale with fear. The corrupted commander, bound tightly by Riven's spell, lay unconscious, his dark aura fully dissolved. The queen's voice trembled as she said, "Whoever altered the prophecy sought to use our fear to fracture the realm. By uncovering the truth, you have undone that scheme." Mira nodded, though exhaustion tugged at her. But this would have been avoided if the realm trusted truth more than prophecy. The queen flinched but did not argue. "You have given us a second chance." Torin crossed his arms and smirked. "So does that mean she gets a reward or at least an apology?" The queen gave Mira a deep bow, surprising everyone. "I offer you both." The entire court gasped. Mira blinked in awkward panic. "Oh no, please do not bow to me. I do not handle formality well." The queen rose gracefully. "Then we offer you our gratitude in words alone. And anything you request." Mira thought for a long moment. Then she said, "I want a vacation. A proper one. With towels. And no kidnapping." Torin burst into laughter, Riven smiled despite himself, and even Kale's stern features softened into something gentle. The queen nodded solemnly. "It shall be arranged." The realm slowly mended over the next hours. The cracks in the palace sealed themselves. The trembling towers grew still. The glowing trees brightened. When the worst had passed, the queen approached Mira, the three men standing protectively around her. "The prophecy has been restored. The true version now spreads through the realm. Fear will not dictate our future any longer." Mira met her gaze. "Good. Because fear nearly destroyed you. Trust in your people, not in ancient riddles." As soon as the queen departed, Cale turned to Mira, his voice low. When you vanished, I feared the worst. I thought we had lost you again. Mira touched his arm lightly. You found me. You always do. Riven came to her other side, studying her closely as though making sure she had not fractured in some unseen way. You should not have risked yourself like that. The crown's magic could have broken you. Mira gave him a tired smile. And leaving it alone would have broken everyone else. Torin leaned in with a grin that did not quite hide the relief in his eyes. Next time you want to jump into ancient magical danger, bring us with you. It is more fun that way. Mira laughed softly, the sound echoing gently in the restored hall. She felt something warm inside her unfurl, something steady and sure. These men were not bound to her by accident. Their bond was not a threat. It was strength. Connection. Choice. She looked at each of them, her voice quiet but firm. You came for me. You risked everything. Not because of a prophecy. Not because you had to. Cale's voice was steady. Because it was you. Riven nodded. And we will do so again. Torin leaned against her shoulder with a playful grin. Preferably with less running and fewer collapsing palaces. Mira rolled her eyes affectionately. I would prefer that too. The queen returned one last time to escort them to a calmer part of the palace. As they crossed the courtyard, the Fae bowed their heads respectfully when Mira passed. She felt embarrassed by the attention but comforted by the men walking beside her. They reached a quiet garden where the shattered crown pieces had been placed to rest, now glowing gently with purified light. Mira stepped forward, touching one piece briefly. Whatever darkness once lived in you, you are free now. The crystal warmed beneath her hand, a faint pulse of gratitude whispering through her mind. She smiled and turned away. Cale placed a cloak around her shoulders. Riven cast a small warming spell. Torin handed her a bundle of soft towels he had stolen from somewhere. Mira sighed in relief. Perfect. As the last of the twilight settled over the realm, Mira walked forward with the three men beside her, the bond between them steady and certain. No prophecy could claim them now. No destiny could twist their path. They had chosen each other. And nothing would take that away.